So welcome everyone to the first episode of the Red Pill Show. Today I have with me Miriam Clements. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Indeed.
Indeed? Okay, so Miriam is from the Logical Party. Is that the full name of it?
Oh, it's not, I used to call it logicism, like communism, socialism, but which it's totally not. It's an evolution of current day democracy and the best of possibly all past systems, and an evolution of a whole lot of other systems that reflect today's challenges. But
yep.
So I used to call it logicism as just a play on a political term. And then a wonderful person inspired me to simplify that to the Logic Party, so that it was just easy to consume.
Sure.
But, so it's logical politics, it's a logicism political theory, and it's the Logic Party.
Sounds awesome. So I was very excited when I saw your video, which kind of a bit of a bolt out of the blue.
Which video did you watch?
The one I watched last night about the Greens and New Zealand First, and the idea that maybe together they could form something that may have some leadership and vision for the country.
I mean, I see the deficiencies in all of the parties, and I guess all of their strengths, and that's what most people buy into, which is what they publicise as their agenda, but without really looking into their execution strategies, which are, so for example, Gareth Morgan complains about banks all the time, but he has no banking policy, he has no monetary policy. In fact, his monetary policy is only suggested by the fact that he's not running for Parliament, he's not going to be in Parliament, he's going to stay as an independent citizen. And he is absolutely pushing the carbon trading. Now, he's a financial guy, right? So carbon trading is the basis of a new global tax and trade system. It's a new global currency. It will eventually diminish sovereignty through the Paris Agreement, and it will take over our currency as a global currency. That means that it will be anarchy to ever take back control of our own system as citizens of a nation. So he's really pushing for that, which is why I think he's staying out of Parliament, because anyone at the forefront of trading that and getting that carbon trading or carbon tax right for the world, even though it's based on completely false science, and I say that as a person who's worked at the front line of environmental defence for 10 years internationally, so, this is not a silly presumption, it's science and fact, and I've argued myself out of the climate change narrative, which is just a tax heist.
Yeah, I'm fully with you.
Position, taking, leading the world in carbon trading, I think it's really misleading. So, that didn't even answer your question.
Well, I just want to dial back a bit, because in one of your videos you mentioned about how things have gone in New Zealand since the 80s, when we still had a large section of our infrastructure was publicly owned, and we had somewhat of a balance between the public sector and the private sector. I was only a kid in the early 80s, and well, sort of the whole of the 80s really, but I do remember it. I do remember I have a sense of how things were back then for my parents and the people around us, and the lifestyles we led and so on. And
what do they say?
Sorry?
What do they say when they describe that time?
That it was a socially healthier time in New Zealand's history. We had a higher kind of self-respect, a sense of community, and there was, I guess, somewhat more of a structure that provided some kind of values and meaning and a sense of vision and a sense of leadership that, I mean, it wasn't perfect. I think Muldoon did a lot of things wrong, didn't understand economics either, for instance. But certainly what happened after Longy came in with Rogernomics was even worse. And there wasn't an understanding of what the heck we're doing. It was kind of blind leading the blind. David Long even said, insofar as I'm not able to understand economics, I have an economist. So he didn't even make the effort to understand economics.
He had more than an economist, and it wasn't the blind leading the blind, really. It was the international establishment designing that process of globalising the country and enabling them to economically take control of the country without being here, like we're a satellite of their wealth generation. David Longy got into power, and he famously, the backroom stories say he sat down, some big corporate leaders walked in, about 10 of the biggest corporate leaders in New Zealand walked in with briefcases, sat down and said, right, David, this is what you're going to do, choice. And, it's interesting, there was a documentary that I watched recently, or an interview on Putin, and he said the same thing. He said, presidents come and go in America, but at the end of the day, once they win their election, there's someone with a black tie, a black suit, black briefcase who walks in that door and says, this is what you're going to do. We're actually a war economy. This is who you're going to aggress. This is what you're going to set up, and we're going to sell some weapons. So, and other things. So the fact is that, we have been corporatized increasingly for a long time. Same with Fonterra and the farmers. I mean, it's very insidious. It's not obvious. It's intentionally kept that way, but blind leading the blind. I don't think so. I think that we have been systematically working to a plan. And people go, oh, conspiracy, but honestly, bad men, greedy men. Sorry, that's a real thing. Smart men with lots of money and the power to create devious strategies to take control of your country. Absolutely,
I hear what you're saying about not being so blind. I guess my point of view is I have no way of understanding for sure how much Roger Douglas believed what he was doing might have been good. He might have been scared by a lot of people who misinterpreted things and said, oh, you're going to have this happen and this happen if you don't do this, and the economy will crash. And so I guess I give some level of benefit of the doubt to some of those people that they may not have known what they were doing.
Yeah, and that's entirely true. They could be approached and persuaded into a certain, a certain strategy and a certain plan, and genuinely be sold the upside of it and think they're doing something good. I mean, it's a classic kind of terrorist cell psychology, isn't it? You tell the people next level down as least as they need to know in order to carry out what you need them to, so that they don't start questioning it. It's who knows how connected it all is. But I mean, I probably spent too long overseas, but I mean, there's no doubt to me that there is a global agenda, and there are people internationally with a plan for each country, and they execute it.
Yeah.
And we are losing control of our country. It's 50% owned, business is 50% owned by foreigners. Our land is 30+% owned by foreigners. Our dollar is controlled by foreigners. Our banks are owned by foreigners. Thus, they transfer our profit out of the country, half of at least to foreigners. Now, the TTP and the Paris Agreement ties our tax system to foreigners. So, we are losing, as New Zealanders, with our ancestors, whether they came by canoes or boats or now planes, I don't know, but
however,
we as here need to be protected, and we're not being. Not by Labour National,
I think,
and not by all the Greens.
No, I think probably you and I both can agree that for mental health and social health, we need to have an active role in the running of our own country. And engaging with one another, to assist each other to understand what's going on and how we can, be involved in the process of making decisions and running our own country. We
can have a world-class country. If we stop letting the foreigners take all our money and control, then we could have a perfect world-class healthcare system. We could have almost no income tax, possibly no income tax, and still have immensely generous public services. It's totally possible if we simply stop the foreigners taking all our wealth away from the country, so that we sit here and have Labour National fighting over the scraps. And often people aren't willing to challenge the system because they've got a loan or just enough to feel like they've got something to protect that they don't want to threaten, and thus they won't challenge the status quo. It's but while they are sitting in that sort of passive, probably slightly aware and slightly concerned about very passive status, our country is disappearing into foreign hands, and it's serious. The only person who is confronting that is Winston Peters in New Zealand First. I fundamentally disagree with the lack of environmental strategy and sustainable transition strategy, and perhaps their dedication to earning more revenue off fossil fuels, and but that's the same as National and Labour. It's no different. They are also dedicated to fossil fuels. But first of all, before anything else, although poisoning ourselves to death is not a good idea, we need to stop giving away our country, because certainly the international owners will continue to contaminate us without giving it a second thought. I mean, who cares? Makes them money. They don't care if we're sick. Sells more pharmaceuticals, probably, which they're also invested in. So, we definitely need, first step, to protect our borders and protect our ownership. And Winston Peters does that. And he's the greatest threat to the establishment. And he was polling at nearly 20%, I think he needs to up his political game on environment and transition, but we should be voting for him right now.
So you started out, you went overseas and you stood up to some fracking that was going on in parts of the world. Is that right? Is that how you?
Oh God, I stood up to all sorts.
Right. Okay.
All the worst politicians and billionaires.
Right.
Okay, probably my environmental defence work began in the Amazon, and I identified I noticed that there was no law that could protect these environments or indigenous or vulnerable populations from destruction. No local law and no international law. So all of these industrialists, the financiers and the politicians licensing this devastation were not being held accountable. And the devastation at the point of industrial distraction is immense and devastating. With fracking, anyone who lives in the proximate area, their water is poisoned, their soil and this food is poisoned, the air is contaminated, any oceans nearby are killed. It's devastating. And so I read every and all of the international law possible that I could lay my hands on and worked through, universal jurisdiction doesn't work because they can't extradite, they have no way to extradite those alleged criminally liable. That was the closest I could find. And then suddenly, when I really consumed the Rome Statute, I realised that actually the definition of crimes of humanity and the definition of genocide and the definition of Article 30, which means that people don't need to maliciously inflict circumstances on another person that will bring about their physical destruction, but they can do so in pursuit of profit. And they're criminally liable simply for awareness that they will, within the ordinary course of events of pursuing that profit, inflict the devastation on another person. And that's what was happening in the rainforest. So, look, I wrote 3 legal arguments to defend tribes in the Amazon and defend the rainforest ecosystem, which were all accepted by the International Criminal Court for review. So that was probably the beginning.
When was that, Miriam? When was that?
Well, I identified the law about six or 7 years ago maybe, but my first correspondence with the court was 2013. My first official case registration was maybe 2014 or 2015. Because I was the first in the world to propose this interpretation of the law. So I first kind of started by testing the court out and submitting, briefs, and then realised that I could in fact submit an argument, and then they accepted it, which I remember at the time I'd spent 2 years trying to persuade the Greenpeace lawyers to help me argue the case, and they said they had internal conflict over whether they would, but I think actually they're funded by industrialists, to be honest, at the highest level, and they're just controlling the opposition to these developments. That's completely in trouble saying that, but I've got a lot of international stories that back that up, back up that presumption, and in the end, even the lawyers at Greenpeace internationally said, wow, I can't believe the court accepted your argument, and then are reviewing it, So, God, it's been an epic battle, but I've got the only legal case remaining that is capable of defending the Great Barrier Reef, the coral reefs in Australia. And working with some of the top Australian environmental lawyers on developing that case and some of Australia's top scientists. And I did a case to protect the Antarctic from Shell drilling for oil, where I argued they needed to voluntarily withdraw or they would be criminally liable for the intent and attempt to drill, which they knew would bring about a spill eventually and cause havoc to the global ecology. And some months later they did voluntarily withdraw, which was expressly the purpose of my argument, saying that if they didn't, they would be criminally liable, the individual directors of Shell. And then obviously in May this year the court accepted my global climate change argument for review. We're very important to again differentiate between climate change as environmental destruction, which is very real, and climate change as a tax heist, an agreement which proposes unenforceable promises and transfers $14 billion of New Zealand taxes offshore in the next 10 years for absolutely no value in return, except people like Robert Mugabe, oh my God, or China or India, proposing that they will reduce CO2. And CO2 is what we breathe out. The ocean breathes in to provide plankton that then provides our oxygen. The rainforest breathes it in to sustain that level of oxygen and ecological balance. It's not a pollutant. So
I've always felt it was a really convenient way to draw people away from things that we know are pollutants, like fluoride, like pesticides. Roundup is an endocrine disruptor. There's a lot of things in our foods. There's a lot of things, heavy metal contamination, PCBs, fracking. I mean, all these things. This was what originally interested a lot of us into the, the environment movement, or being concerned about the environment. And then all of a sudden, each of those has kind of dropped by the wayside. and it's just it's all climate change. It's the most serious thing. So don't look down here. We have to stop this first. And to me, whether it's
literally like here's these guys polluting your water, so you can't swim in it, you can't drink it, and everything in it is dying. Okay, so don't look at that. But think about in the future how someone might then use that, combust it, and then that might change an atmospheric gas that is actually the gas of life. It sustains life. But it will change it's 1 out of every 86,800 molecules is industrial CO2, and that is going to somehow make tides rise and kill you way into the future, and that's what we need to charge tax on.
And it's based on the idea of positive feedback, which has never been shown to.
Citing NGOs about this for years. It's absolutely so illogical.
Yeah. I'm very happy to hear you say that, Miriam, because I wasn't quite sure where you explicitly stood on that, or what your personal thoughts were. So
it's a tax heist. We don't need to pay $14 billion in taxes offshore to the UN to start a global government in the next 10 years. All we need to do is set in motion a sustainable transition strategy that would take 2 political terms, max 3 for agriculture. We would have a world-class sustainably transitioned economy, a new style of economy that people all around the world could follow. It's epic, and so it's a massive tax heist. It's a massive fraud. So Labour and National are pushing that through. Total idiots, honestly. And Top and the Greens are right there backing them with it. Sure. It's so dangerous. The only party you can vote for, the only major party you can vote for that is not a fan, is saying, like Russia is saying, we will not ratify that into our law we will not trade carbon until all of our allies are trading it too. Like, we will be the last in the world to do this because it's wrong and it's a fraud and it's corruption and it's effectively, globalizing our tax system. It's crazy. You have to stop it.
Yes.
It's really, really crazy. But it's very difficult because people are really emotional, obviously, in protection of the environment, which obviously I am too. I've dedicated my life to it now. It's all I do is work towards that, and making war illegal and not for profit and sustainable transition mechanisms. So broad scope, but people don't see the disconnect. That we have to start terming climate change, the real meaning of climate change that we care about, that we genuinely want to stop, is environmental destruction, contamination, overconsumption, unsustainable consumption. That is what is causing the imbalance in our society, and it's not the magical gas of life. Unless your breath is killing someone, it's the last thing in the world that is a pollutant. Yeah,
really happy to hear you say that, Miriam. So I also quite enjoyed, you mentioned, I've always been a fan of, years ago I read E.F. Schumacher's Small is Beautiful about economy of scales and communities becoming more self-reliant in terms of things like energy and food and all those things, rather than unnecessarily centralised systems where especially where you need to import resources from halfway around the world and so on. We don't need to do a lot of that. I kind of think, especially as our technology in general improves, it does allow more smaller scales of production, and you mentioned about energy that we could have smaller power production in our communities rather than massive pylons transporting it across the whole country. So I'm very interested in these things. I'm always aware that maybe some for instance, when electric cars came out, was all exciting, but then you find out you have to mine the rare earth elements and the lithium and all these things, and like you said, silicone for the solar cells. You have to mine all of that stuff, and that's very dirty at point of extraction.
Killing people offshore. So, and that's where I guess it gives me perspective because I'm working with the indigenous in the rainforest to stop the industrial destruction against all odds. They're literally being exterminated and poisoned to death, and it's being allowed by the highest governments, the highest courts. No one is stopping it. No one cares. These people are completely vulnerable and exposed to an extermination, and it's slow and insidious and disgusting. And it's done for our profit, It's wrong. Yeah. We have to rebalance it. But it certainly brings that balanced perspective where I'm sort of think half of the, I think Bill and Jacinda, it's possible they don't even understand it. Honestly, they've sat in global conferences where the wealthiest in the world have paid scientists to sit there and say, You're going to, sink. You're going to sink your country in the future because of this carbon tax that you're breathing out, or carbon that you're breathing out, the ocean's breathing in, and it's generating all life. So because of that, you need science agreement. And they're like good little boy and girl scouts and sign it up. Sign away the country without any real knowledge of science and carbon's history and how it fits into the world. I mean, it's like complaining about a wheel nut on a car. Honestly, it's that ridiculous. You could lose a wheel nut and your wheel's still going to be on because there's a bunch of others.
So I'm interested about the power situation, the electricity.
Yeah.
So do you have some ideas about how you could have, like, would you have smaller? Could hydropower be in smaller scales, or are there ways to do solar?
Look, I have a completely developed strategy on this that I've worked on for 4 years in Paris. I wanted Paris to lead the world in transitioning the city to entirely clean energy, local, decentralised model of energy that utilised all the new small-scale technologies and put them together in a multi-level mini power tower, which could sit, and I had General Electric agree to sponsor me with a $100,000 SCADA software system, which could be installed and then centrally manage all these individual power towers. So you imagine an individual tower on each street, and it provided all the waste to value technologies, processed all the waste into 100% value, whether it's different forms of energy, biofuel, electricity, or recycled value, whichever was optimized output of whatever the input was. We could have all the plant technologies like algae, got solar technologies like artificial photosynthesis, which in a small scale, again, is totally possible to install right now. You can recycle the water into hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen generated from water, which totally exists, but it's buried by all those who want to, control or monopolize the revenues of the energy system. You could do all of that within this mini power tower, provide all the energy needs for the street. You could provide all of the biofuel or hydrogen fuel from water, not dirty industry, as you said rightly, for cars. And that's another thing. What blocks the alternative technologies for cars to allow us to transition? And we can have cars running on a combination of solar and kinetic energy right now, and reverse braking energy, and we can have that combination. We can have 2 batteries in the car that perpetually recharge each other. I mean, once you pretty much start it through solar, as it's driving, it's recharging through solar and kinetic energy, and one battery is alternating back to the other, and you've got perpetual energy for free, effectively. And that's a pretty crude way of talking about it. And I've got on my sustainablequalitypurpose.com site, I've got that conceptual transition strategy outlined, because I propose that, well, if we could do that, then we're zero harm to the environment. You can access potentially a recharge or some form of extra input from these mini power towers in your local area, and you could start charging people based on use per kilometre. So that's an evolution of thinking that most people in the industry or conservative way of running our economy can't bear. They sort of think it's crazy, but it's so obvious and it's possible now. The technology exists. Let's be the country that leads the world in that change. But back to the Paris Agreement. Do you know it doesn't include carbon monoxide? So the most obvious contamination is carbon monoxide, right? It's spewing out the end of your exhaust. Doesn't include it as a tax. It taxes what you breathe out, but it doesn't tax what the carbon monoxide coming out of your car does to the environment. That's indication enough that agreement is a fraud.
I'm always a bit sceptical when I hear about perpetual motion. So I'm sure there's some kind of science in what you're saying.
No, it's not. No, it's not science. It is, but it's logical.
Right.
Okay, there are one of my friends on Facebook is the solar car engineer for NASA, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm always seeing him around the world in solar car competitions where they race and they win and it works perfectly. Okay, so you can have a car powered completely by solar.
Yeah.
Right. So if you then consider the fact that you can have
it's hard to make the batteries for that. You've got to mine a lot of lithium, right?
Oh yeah, I mean the batteries. I mean there's new energy storage technologies out there as well, and there's a lot of energy storage technologies going on in universities. these technologies don't get a route to market. You know, the reason that there's a lithium market and the batteries are coming online is because the lithium stores and I forget, it's like something 300, look, I forget the amount, but it's massively restricted. It's absolutely a non-renewable resource, and we've got limited stocks. Okay, so the money potential in selling lithium and allowing the batteries to go to market are huge. So as long as you get a couple of the incumbents in monopolising energy into that market, then they're going to allow that technology to roll out, because they're going to make billions and billions off it. Sound like Trump, billions and billions and billions. But just a little video I watched of him, very educational. But look, the fact is that we have the technologies that can completely evolve our energy systems. In New Zealand, we have complete energy self-sufficiency the moment we want it. We have already 40% clean energy. Sometimes our electricity is up to 87% generated by clean energy. We can completely transition to clean energy within 3 years, I think. That's 6 years, definitely, with the right government. So why aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, why are the Greens proposing a steady sort of 20, 30, 40-year development plan, you know, or 2050 being the end goal for all transition? It doesn't need to take that long. We need people who can run a country like they run a business, with absolute empathy for the people, but with efficiency and effectiveness of installing the change. It's totally possible. You know, I've run businesses for years. You can turn a result in a second, as long as you've got an excellent execution team and experts involved. We need real leaders to run this country.
So I'm very interested, did you get a chance to look at Warren Mosler?
I didn't. You know, my day has just been completely run off its feet.
Okay.
I pulled in 1,000 directions.
Right. So I'll just put some ideas to you from my understanding of his economics, that our Reserve Bank, for instance, is the government institution whereby it spends, basically. So that's what validates the New Zealand currency.
Yeah.
Warren's book, 7 Deadly Innocent Frauds of Economic Policy, he kind of thinks people are innocent in the sense they just don't understand how it works and how it could work.
Like ignorance.
Ignorance, yeah. I mean, the idea that if we spend in our own currency, there's nothing to worry about in terms of a deficit. So we can run our own country. We can pay our own people to build our roads, build hospitals, build a railway system that works, or as you say electricity production, and we could build all these little transition decentralized power production systems that can all be funded out of our own currency from our own Reserve Bank, and there's not a problem with that, right?
No,
and
no problem.
So the other,
the outcome of that is that the establishment, our international owners, don't make money off us.
Right.
So that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why it's not happening, because those who control our economy, because Labour opened up our borders and made that possible, and National carried it on, they won't allow it to happen unless we absolutely back the person in the greatest position to make that change. And that is Winston Peters, this election. Yeah. I mean, definitely also me, because I'm standing as an MP for the Logic Party, but you're totally right. He's totally right. We have to take back control of our money. Those who control the money of the country own the country. Yeah.
So I'm gathering that there's going to be a lot of people, perhaps, I mean, older people, younger people, a lot of people who can hear what you're saying here and are going to think, well, you know, this seems true to me. This resonates with my experience of the world and the way it's gone and the way the country's gone in the last 30 years. So, you know, that's the kind of excitement that I had when I saw your video last night. So, yeah, so how much, you know, how do we reach, you know, young people, older people, people who would be open to, you know, who want better for their children and the next generations, and just
exactly. Right. Look, we have to start. Well, for a start, you know, anyone who's really interested can read the policies in depth at logic.org.nz and read all the links. You know, I've got world-class legal arguments on there that enable our transition, enable us to afford the transition. I've got, you know, agriculture transition strategies. Everything is on there. And, you know, I'm really enjoying developing my vision for Takapuna right now that I'm standing in North Shore, you know, and all of the North Shore, because that's a whole new sort of more local attention to the real human aspect of politics. But we need to really learn these policies and reflect on them and what they could mean, and then we need to start talking to each other about them, because we do have the power with the vote. You know, I was at the electoral office yesterday, and New Zealand is a very unique system in that the votes are manually counted. You know, no one's allowed access to their phones, no one's allowed in or out, and you know, whilst there could be some sneakies sort of put in the system to fix the votes, I'm pretty sure it's likely that it's not able to be hacked, which means that the people in New Zealand have the power, and all we need to do is vote with it well, in an educated way. We need to see National and Labour as two heads on the same beast. We need to see that they are, you know, just a low-tax system or a high-tax system that allocates the scraps of money that the international establishment leaves us behind just to keep us, you know, from rioting in the streets. We need to vote independent this election. That's absolutely certain.
So have you spoken with Winston Peters? Or?
Look, I won't go into the exchange. I've been circulating around with all sorts of members of the party. Yeah, I sent him my little pictures of.
Yeah, I saw those pictures
of my new campaign featuring him. He didn't comment on that. But look, I've had top international criminal barristers call him and suggest that he runs with me as co-leader, which I'm sure he enjoyed and appreciated. Because it's obvious that New Zealanders don't have an environmental and sustainable transition policy, and I do, and my work is world class in that area. So, I mean, I'm aligned with him on the fact that the Paris Agreement is a heist, although he doesn't explicitly say that, but his policies suggest he knows it. But he's playing the PC game of not acknowledging it. But I'm just straight, you know, that's what's happening. I'm going to talk about it. People need to be aware of it. Because otherwise we're going to lose our country, and it won't be recoverable. Because the technologies that DARPA have got now, that the international military have got, there's, you know, Raytheon people who've been visiting people who have been starting new political parties in New Zealand with their business cards and trying to kind of staunch them out of running in opposition to the established international control here. And Raytheon are a private defence contractor. You know, what are they doing in this country? What are they doing interfering in our political process? It's not acceptable, and that is happening right now, and that is under National's watch. So, you know, I think people really need to start educating themselves on how this affects their access to money, their quality of life, their support in the downtimes, their access to housing, their access to medicine, etc., etc., etc. Politics has everything to do with how we get to enjoy our lives every day. You know, it's so important.
I've been watching how things have been going, especially in terms of how the politically expedient division of the population into very, you know, collectivist ideologies. So you have the far left and the far right, or what they call the alt-right and the far left. And I don't know if you've been watching this, but it's kind of quite horrific when you see what's happening in America right now. Have you seen what's been happening in Berkeley, where people are spraying each other with, you know, mace, pepper sprays to stop people? I mean, it's quite.
Look, I lived in France when they slowly militarised the streets, and you can't. I mean, I'd go for a run every day along the Seine, and on my way, I would pass, you know, military men with AK-47s everywhere, you know. And when I first arrived in France, it wasn't like that. So, you know, I watched that, and I watched what I researched was false flag provocations to drive a nation to rally the tax system for war, to go and, you know, I mean, some guy from Tunisia goes and shoots some people, and the next minute the president is saying, we're going to hit Syria with you know, a level of warfare that they've never seen before, when it wasn't even a Syrian who did the crime, you know. I mean, it's just absolutely illogical, and yet they manage to twist the media so they buy it. So you know, back to your question, I think it has a lot to do with the media narratives. You know, they are. Yeah, I mean, do you understand where I'm going with that?
Well, I mean, I kind of see that the media is. I mean, I read Manufacturing Consent by Chomsky years ago, and I think he was quite accurate about how the media, you know, plays to the advertisers and the major corporations and who are paying their bills basically, and so they present a narrative that fits with the most powerful owners of those news corporations or advertisers with them. So that made sense to me, but it's kind of, to me, it seems that it's heading into another level of nastiness and division, and I you know, for instance, the way that a friend of mine on Facebook wrote a book called Once We Were One, which he's looking at New Zealand. You may have heard of that book, but he's talking about New Zealand, how we are an amalgamated culture. You know, we began, you know, roughly nearly 200 years ago, and we were a mix, you know, and we had we had then a treaty to try and work a way that we could, you know, live together in peace and so on. And I think toward perhaps maybe, you know, in the 80s we came quite close to being a culture that was amalgamated, that we were. You know, we were a mix. You know, I always say there's a bit of Maori in me because I'm not genetically part Maori, but there is Maori in me because, you know, my neighbour is, and we hang out, and I grew up, and my dad was Austrian, and his friends were Maori because they worked together as builders. You know, so
look, I never saw the waste of it, honestly, and I feel so sad that we're letting that be instigated in New Zealand, because I'm exactly the same. I grew up in a rural area. I was literally the blonde girl in pretty much a class of Māori people, and you know, there were a couple of us who were European descent, but most were Māori, and we were all friends. We were people. We never ever saw the race division. We never. Right. It didn't occur to me. It didn't exist. We were not racist. And I definitely appreciate that there have been Māori who have been oppressed or experienced racism and that sort of thing. But I think in the main, New Zealand had a really healthy coexistence of race here. And I would like to see that come back. And that's why I think Winston Peters, I mean, I sound like I'm a mega fan, but I mean, I do respect the man. I think he's by far the best option for Prime Minister other than me. And it's... He because he is half Māori, he can say, look, we are all one people, and the way to give the best for Māori is to give the best for every person to have quality of life, first class healthcare, first class education, first class everything. Let's not diminish or elevate anyone based on race. Yeah, big
time. And I've always thought, you know, I'm not a you know, I like the idea of a public sector that's there to help the ones that fall through the cracks and people who are, for whatever reason, struggling to get through and unemployed and so on. And you help the people in need according to their need, not according to their skin colour. I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of,
I heard someone on Marama folks say the other day, you should give back our country, Māori own this country. And I was like, you know, Māori are Indigenous people, but they're not Indigenous to this country. They came on canoes, you know. If you watch Hawaii, you'll see the haka everywhere. That's where the origins of their culture come from, and that's fantastic. You know, why are we pretending that didn't happen? We all know that happened. We then came on boats. You know, now people are coming on planes, and the dudes that are coming on planes own 50% of the country. So I joked the other day, I said, when National talk about prosperity, they're telling you that the ones overseas who still let us live here just on our land are doing very, very well with a prosperous economy because they own it all. But at the end of the day, look, we're all immigrants. This is a country of immigrants. And actually, if you look at history, just factually, accurately, the oldest skulls ever to be found here archaeologically are redheads. So maybe we should give the country back to Scotland. I don't know.
Who knows?
We need to bring everyone out of poverty. We need to give everyone security of tenure and a home. We need to make sure everyone has healthcare and heating and quality, healthy food and... You know, quality of life, we need to ensure that for everyone.
I thought we might have had a lot of things we'd disagree on, but as it turns out, we kind of don't really. So that was quite interesting,
Anyone really well researched on this stuff, though, there's only one truth, you know. So.
Yeah, that's it. When you're excited about truth, you kind of eventually converge.
Maybe we'll have to join the Logic Party.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. Maybe you might like the Red Pill Party and follow my post.
I did try and persuade all the individual parties to come together as one major party.
Okay, cool.
This election, and there's a lot that are interested for next election. At the end of the day, if we don't come together as one third major, we don't have a chance. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right, cool.
I should let you go and be with your family, but lovely to connect.
Thank you very much. I'll send you some messages every now and then, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on Warren Mosler economics.
Yeah, I'll try and have a look.
Cool. Okay. Cheers, Miriam. Bye bye. See ya. Bye. Well,
I'm not here.
What's that?
I want to say hello.
She's very good, but unfortunately
I want to say hello.
my camera. Yeah, she's gone now, sweetie.